Good afternoon. My name is Vishnu Ashwath, and this is my Lasher Business Institute Capstone presentation. Over the next 50 minutes, I'm going to walk you through all 7 modules of this program, covering leadership, entrepreneurship, business analysis, personal finance, and legacy. This presentation represents everything I've learned, challenged, and genuinely thought about throughout this course. I hope it reflects that. Here's a quick map of what we'll cover today. 7 modules, each building on the last, from understanding leadership to analyzing real companies to thinking seriously about money to asking why any of this matters. I'll move through each in sequence so you'll see how the ideas connect. Module 1, Leadership and Management. This section is grounded in Cotter and Rathgeber's book, Our Iceberg is Melting, and in the leadership philosophy I've been developing throughout this course. Our Iceberg is Melting is a business fable written by Dr. John Cotter and Holger Rathgeber. It was published in 2006, and on the surface, it's a story about a colony of emperor penguins who discover their iceberg is melting. But it's really about how organizations respond or fail to respond to change. Each penguin represents a different kind of person you'll find in any organization. Fred is a curious scout. He's the one who sees the problem first and has the courage to say something. Alice is a pragmatic leader who knows how to actually get things done. And then there's No-No, the skeptic who resists every new idea. What I found powerful about this book is how recognizable every character is. We've all worked with a no-no. We've all been a Fred, seeing a problem clearly but not knowing how to convince anyone else. The quote on the screens captures the book's core argument. Change is not an event. It's something that happens to you once. It's not something that happens to you once. It's a process and it requires deliberate, sustained leadership. Cotter built his career studying why organizational efforts fail, and this book distills those lessons into something anyone can understand regardless of their title or background. Carter's 8-step change model is the intellectual backbone of the book. These 8 steps describe exactly what successful organizational change looks like, and more importantly, what skipping any step costs you. Step 1 is creating urgency. This is arguably the most important step and the one most leaders get wrong. Creating urgency doesn't mean manufacturing panic or running around screaming that the iceberg is melting. It means helping people feel the stakes clearly and genuinely. Why does this matter? Why does it matter now? Step 2 is building a coalition. You cannot drive change alone. You need a team that has credible trust and the ability to mobilize others. In the fable, Fred can't change the colony by himself. He needs Alice and he needs the council. Step 3 and 4 are about vision, creating a clear, compelling direction and then communicating it through every channel every day. Potter says that most organizations undercommunicate the change vision by a factor of 10. You have to repeat the message far more than what feels necessary. Step 5 and 6 focus on execution, removing obstacles so that the change can actually happen, generating quick wins to maintain momentum, and making sure that people see that their effort is working. Steps 7 and 8 are about sustainability, building on early success before declaring victory, and ultimately embedding the new approach into the organization's culture. The last step is the hardest. Most change efforts fail here because leaders move on to the next problem before the new behaviors have truly taken root. Let me share the 5 lessons that stayed with me the most after reading this book. First, urgency is not panic. I've seen adults in professional settings confuse, sorry, I've seen adults in professional settings confuse these two things, sending frantic emails, raising their voices, raising their voices, creating a culture of fear. That's not urgency. Real urgency is communication about why something matters, backed by evidence. Panic makes people freeze. Urgency makes people move. Second, leadership is distributed. No single penguin saved that colony. The fable is a story of collective leadership, different people stepping up at different moments. Resilient organizations develop leaders at every level and not just at the top. If everything depends on one person, the organization is fragile. Third, vision must be shareable. A vision only has power if the people you're leading can repeat it, explain it to others, and then act on it independently. If it takes you 10 minutes to explain your vision, it's too complex to actually be actionable. Fourth, skeptics or assets. Nono annoyed me when I first read the book, but then he forced the coalition to stress test every single idea. The person who always asks, but what if this goes wrong, is not your enemy. They're your risk manager. I've learned to seek out critics before I present any plan publicly. And fifth, culture eats strategy. The final step in Cotter's model, anchoring change in culture. This is the hardest because you can't legislate it. You can't mandate a culture change. It only sticks when it becomes embedded in norms, stories, and daily behaviors. Strategy is a plan. Culture is the environment that either makes the plan possible or makes the plan impossible. Now, I want to talk about developing my own leadership philosophy, what I've actually believed about how to guide and manage people, grounded in what I've learned this year. My first pillar is servant leadership. I believe a leader's primary job is not to direct people from above, it's to remove obstacles so that the people around you can do their best work. My job is to make others succeed. If my team is winning, I'm also winning. Second, transparency and trust. I commit to radical honesty, not brutal honesty. There's a difference. Radical honesty means being truthful even when it's uncomfortable, but doing it with care. People follow leaders they trust, and trust is built slowly through consistency, candor, and destroyed quickly through dishonesty or spin. Third, bias toward action. I believe that costly leadership failure is indecision. When you're uncertain, gather the data you can, make a decision, and be willing to adjust. Moving fast and being wrong sometimes beats moving slowly and never acting. And fourth, develop others. My personal measure of success as a leader will not be what I accomplish individually, it will be how many people I helped grow around me. Leadership is ultimately about multiplication. Your impact should extend beyond your own hands. Philosophy is great, but it needs to translate into behavior. So here are the five concrete things I will actually do when I'm in a position of leadership. One, set clear expectations before the work begins. Every person on my team will know what success looks like. It will be measured and what the deadline is. Ambiguity is one of the most demotivating forces in any workplace. Two, create feedback loops, weekly one-on-ones, retrospectives, a culture where giving critical feedback is expected and welcomed, not a sign that something has gone wrong, but a sign that we're paying attention. Three, celebrate wins publicly and specifically. Recognition costs nothing and is incredibly powerful. I will never let good work go unnoticed. Four, manage with data. My decisions will be grounded in evidence. Opinions are starting points. That's how we will begin a conversation, but conclusions need to be supported by facts. And five, invest in growth. I will dedicate real time and real resources to helping the people around me develop, not just as tools for getting work done, but as helping human beings build their careers. Those are my commitments, and that is who I intend to be as a leader. Module two, symposium speakers. Out of all the entrepreneurs who came in to speak, the one who left the biggest impression on me was Omar Solomon, the co-founder of College Hunks, hauling junk and moving. His story is one of the best real-world examples I've countered of what it actually looks like to start a business from nothing, not from a trust fund, not from a famous connection or from a perfect plan, but from a beat-up plan and handmade flyers. Let me walk you through who he is, what he built, and what I'm taking from his story. Omar Solomon was born and raised in Washington, D.C. He didn't grow up in a rich family. His mother owned a furniture store, and from age 10, he was already helping with marketing, delivering, and sales. That's the environment that shaped how he sees business, something hands-on, real, and close to the customer. He went on to attend University of Miami's business school, graduating in 2004 with a bachelor's of business administration. But the most important thing that happened to him at U Miami wasn't in a classroom. It was at a summer job gone sideways in the best possible way. He co-founded College Hunks, hauling junk and moving in 2003 with his childhood best friend, Nick Friedman. They started with one van, his mom's beat-up cargo van, and with no formal plan. Within a few years, that van became a multi-million dollar franchise. The company now has over 200 franchise locations worldwide, more than 10,000 team members, and brings in over 300 million dollars in annual system-wide revenue. He appeared on the very first episode of ABC's Shark Tank. He famously turned down the Shark's offer because he didn't want to give up control of the business. He has been named one of INC's top 30 entrepreneurs in America under 30, and in 2018, he won Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year award. The themes on the right side of this slide, starting small, winning, competition, franchising, branding, purpose, are exactly what his story is about. Omar's origin story is one of the cleanest examples of entrepreneurial pattern recognition I've come across. It started in the summer of 2003. Omar was working at his mom's furniture store when he noticed something. Every time they made a delivery, customers would ask if they could haul away their old furniture too, and they'd happily pay $50 or more for the service. Omar saw a need. He borrowed his mom's cargo van and launched it that week. On day one, he and his co-founder Nick printed homemade flyers and put them around the neighborhood. The same evening, his phone started ringing. They spent the whole summer hauling junk, waking up early, working late, no air conditioning in the van, and at the end of the summer, they had made over $8,000 with zero prior experience. When he returned to the University of Miami for his senior year, he enrolled in an entrepreneurship class. His professor announced that a business plan competition, a $10,000 prize for the one with the best business plan. Omar submitted college hunks out of the one out of 150 entries. It was selected as one of the 20, he was selected as one of the 20 finalists. He gave a live presentation to a panel of real business owners and alumni judges and won first place. That $10,000 check was the seed funding that launched the company. Omar said later that winning the competition wasn't just about the money. It was the first time someone outside his circle told him this was real. After brief stints in corporate jobs that left both founders miserable, Nick sent Omar an email asking about his timetable. They bought a truck, incorporated the brand, and went all in on College Hunks full time, starting in 2005. College Hunks could have stayed a local junk hauling company. What turned it into a national brand was a deliberate decision to build something that couldn't be that could be replicated and to franchise it. The service side was straightforward: junk removal, full script moving, labor only moving help, and eventually an online junk exchange platform. Simple, high demand, and relatively low barrier to entry. But where Omar and Nick really differentiated themselves was the brand, the name itself, which was actually coined by Omar's mom, which was memorable and fun. They built the HUNKS acronym in their company: honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable, and service oriented. They invested in iconic orange and green trucks. They modeled the customer experience on Disney, not just getting the job done, but making the interaction feel exceptional. And then they franchised it. The franchise means that instead of Omar personally buying 200 trucks and hiring 10,000 people himself, independent business owners pay to license the college hunk system, the training, the brand, the call center, the operations playbook, and run their own location under the college hunks flag. The key insight at the bottom of the slide is the one I want you to remember. Franchising lets you multiply your model without multiplying your risk. College Hunks went from one van to 200 locations without Omar personally funding all of it. Omar's story left me with four ideas I'm genuinely going to carry into how I think about business and entrepreneurship. First, you don't need permission to start. Omar didn't wait until he had funding, a degree, an office, or a business partner with an MBA. He saw a need, borrowed a van, made a flyer, and started. The van was enough. I want to remember that when the voice in my head is telling me that I'm not ready yet. Second, competitions or capital. The $10,000 Omar won at U Miami was important, but what it actually gave him was validation, credibility, and confidence. Entrepreneurship competitions, events help build your credibility and confidence and exist to reward people who take their ideas seriously enough to present them. That's a resource most people my age don't even know how to look for. Third, the brand is the business. College Hunks was always going to be a moving and junk removal company. What made it defensible, what made people remember it, what made people pay a premium for it was the brand, the name, the orange trucks, The hunks values, the purpose statement, move the world. Identity is strategy. And fourth, scale through systems, not just hustle. Omar is not personally running 200 franchise locations. He built a training program, a centralized call center, a franchise operations model, so that the business could go far beyond what any single person could manage alone. If you want to go from one van to a national company, you have to build the system that runs without you. That's what I learned from Omar Solomon, and those are plans and ideas that I plan on using in the future. Module 3, Business Leader Profile. I chose Gautam Adani, and I want to be direct from the start. This is not a straightforward praise or admiration piece of Gautam Adani. Adani's story is extraordinary and deeply complicated. I think studying him honestly is more instructive than choosing someone who's easier to praise. Gautam Adani was born in 1962 in Gujarat, India. He dropped out of college at 16 and started as a diamond sorter before building what is now the Adani Group, one of the largest, most powerful conglomerates in the world. At his peak in 2022, he briefly became the second richest person on earth with a net worth exceeding $100 billion. His group operates across seven major sectors: ports, airports, energy, data centers, media, cement, and defense. He is, by any measure, one of the most remarkable business stories of the 21st century. He is also one of the most controversial. Both things are true, and I think you can only understand him if you hold both at once. The first quality that distinguishes Adani, for better or for worse, is his mastery of political relationships. His rise is inseparable from the career of Narendra Modi. Adani's first major asset, the Mund Report in Gujarat, was developed during Modi's tenure as the chief minister of that state. Critics argue that the land allocation terms were unusually favorable. Supporters argue Adani simply won the contracts fairly. When India privatized its airports, Adani Group won management rights to six major airports in a single bid. Despite having no prior experience running airports, when coal mining licenses were distributed, Adani was well positioned to receive them. I want to be clear, having political relationships is not automatically corrupt. Every major infrastructure company in every country cultivates government relationships because infrastructure depends on government permits, land, and contracts. But the scale and consistency of Adani's political alignment raises legitimate questions about whether the playing field is level for his competitors. The lesson I draw from this is not that you should pursue corruption, it's that understanding the political and regulatory environment in any industry is as important as understanding the market. Business cannot happen in a vacuum. Adani's second defining strategy is the use of debt, specifically leveraging existing assets to acquire new ones in a continuous cycle of expansion. The chart on the left shows how Adani Group's net debt grew from roughly $10 billion in 2018 to nearly $29 billion by 2022. That is an almost threefold increase in 4 years. That this is not unusual for infrastructure businesses. They are capital intensive by nature, but the pace was aggressive, even by those standards. The risk structure was particularly exposed in two ways. First, Adani family members pledged significant portions of their personal shareholdings as loan collateral. That means if the stock price drops sharply, those pledged shares could be called, forcing a sell-off that causes further price drops in a vicious cycle, which is exactly what happened in January 2023. A short seller research firm called Hindenburg Research published a detailed report making serious allegations against the Adani Group. Within weeks, Adani stocks lost between 50 and 80% of their value, erasing over $100 billion in market cap. This is what over leverage looks like when it unwinds. Third quality that makes Adani remarkable in his commitment and his commitment is vertical integration, owning every aspect of the value chain in his core businesses. Look at the coal example over here. He owns the mines in Australia where the coal is extracted. He owns the Adani port where it is shipped. He owns the Adani power plants where it is burned. He owns the Adani transmission lines, which carry the electricity to the grid. And then he sells directly to the end consumers. This is not just efficient, it is strategically brilliant. By owning each layer, he eliminates every competitor's margin at each step. He can undercut rivals at any single point in the chain while remaining profitable across the whole system. and the capital requirements of replicating the structure create a barrier to entry that's virtually insurmountable for new entrants. Finally, I think it's very important to address the Hindenburg research report directly because I think it's an important part of understanding Adani and of understanding how these financial markets actually work. In January 2023, Hindenburg, a well-known short seller based in the United States, published a report alleging that the Adani Group had used a network of offshore shell entities to artificially inflate its own stock prices, conceal the debt on off-balance sheets, and engage in undisclosed related party transactions. These are serious allegations. Stock price manipulation is illegal everywhere. Using offshore entities to, to hide liabilities is a textbook fraud technique, and the structure described funds in Mauritius with opaque ownership trading Adani shares was suspicious enough to trigger a Supreme Court of India investigation. The Adani Group issued a 413-page rebuttal denying all allegations. Some of the charges were disputed by Indian regulators. The full legal picture is still developing as I'm researching this. What I understand from this, extraordinary wealth built at extraordinary speed in markets with not very good regulations often comes with immense risks, legal, reputational, and structural. Adani's story is a case study of ambition, strategic genius, and the dangers of operating at the edge of what institutions can contain. Module 4, Company Analysis and Stock Pitch. The company I'm pitching is the NVIDIA Corporation, ticker symbol NVDA on the NASDAQ. And my thesis is straightforward. NVIDIA is the infrastructure of the global artificial intelligence revolution, and that position creates one of the most durable competitive moats in modern business industry. NVIDIA was founded in 1933 by Jensen Huang, Chris Malachowski, and Curtis Prem. It started as a graphics card company, making GPUs for video games, and for its first 20 years, was largely what it was known for. But Jensen Huang had a vision that most people missed. The same parallel processing capability that made graphics rendering fast would also be ideal for artificial intelligence workloads. And he was right. Today, NVIDIA's data center segment, which supplies the GPUs used to train and run AI models, generates roughly 87% of the company's total revenue. That is a dramatic shift from its gaming origins. In the fiscal year 2024, NVIDIA generated over $60 billion in revenue. That is 5.5 times increase from the previous year. The company's net margin is what it keeps as a profit after all costs. It is around 55%. For a hardware company, that is almost unheard of. It reflects massive pricing power. As of my research, the company is valued at over $2 trillion, making it one of the most valuable companies in history. Let me explain why the market believes that that number might still be justified. The chart on the left tells a compelling financial story. Revenue went from under 11 billion in the fiscal year in 2020 to over 60 billion in 2024. That growth curve is nearly vertical, which reflects the moment AI infrastructure went from a niche research interest to a global capital priority. But revenue alone doesn't make an investment. Let me walk through the fundamentals. Gross margin is approximately 74%. That means for every dollar NVIDIA collects, it keeps 74 cents before operating expensive. That's pharmaceutical level profitability for a company making physical hardware. Free cash flow in the fiscal 2024 was over $26 billion. Cash that NVIDIA is using for share buybacks, dividends, and continued research and development investment. The company spent nearly $9 billion on research and development last year alone. Earnings per share grew by roughly 600% year over year in the fiscal 2024. The debt to equity ratio is a conservative 0.42. The company is not over-leveraged. This is a financially healthy business growing at a historically unusual pace. The fundamental question for any NVIDIA investment is how durable is the AI infrastructure build out? Is this temporary spike in demand or is it a sustained multi-decade investment cycle? I believe it is the latter for four reasons. First, training demand. Every major AI model you've heard of, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, was trained on NVIDIA's GPUs. The H100 and the newer Blackwell chips are the de facto standard for large-scale model training. This is not just preference, It is deeply embedded in the workflows of every major AI lab. Second, inference demand. Training a model is a one-time cost, but running it, inference is ongoing. Every time someone sends a ChatGPT message, that query runs on NVIDIA hardware. As AI adoption grows, inference demand grows continuously with user volume. We are still in the very early innings of AI adoption. Third, sovereign AI. This is a newer demand category that most people don't discuss. Nations, from India to Saudi Arabia to the UAE, are now purchasing NVIDIA clusters to build national AI infrastructure. This is government level, budget driven demand that is largely immune to economic cycles. And fourth, the CUDA mode. The NVIDIA software program, CUDA, has been the dominant development environment for AI research for 15 years. The ecosystem of tools, libraries, frameworks is optimized for CUDA. A competitor could build an equivalent chip tomorrow and just could still lose because no one wants to rewrite their entire code base. The pie chart on the left says it all. NVIDIA holds approximately 82% of the AI accelerator market. AMD is at 8%. Everyone else combined, including custom chips from Google and Amazon, is at 10%. The market share is protected by four layers of moat. First, the CUDA ecosystem I just described, 15 years of developer adoption that cannot be replaced quickly. Second, networking. When NVIDIA acquired Mellanox in 2020 for $7 billion, most people didn't pay much attention, but Mellanox makes the high-speed networking that connects GPU clusters together inside AI data centers. NVIDIA now owns the entire AI infrastructure stack, from the chips to the tables that link them. Third, supply chain positioning. NVIDIA has deep relationships with Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the dominant chip maker. That gives it priority manufacturing capacity. Competitors who want to produce chips at scale often can't access to manufacturing capacity to match NVIDIA's volume. And fourth, talent. The best AI researchers in the world build their careers on NVIDIA hardware. That creates a self-reinforcing flywheel. More talent adoption drives better tooling, which drives more adoption. Every honest investment pitch needs both a bull case and a bear case. Let me give you both. On the bull side, AI infrastructure is a multi-decade investment cycle, and NVIDIA is the shovel seller in the AI gold rush. The company grew revenue 5.5 times in a single year. That fast scaling of any large cap company, that is the fastest scaling of any large cap company in history. The CUDA locks in and creates near permanent switching costs, and the Blackwell architecture opens entirely new markets in autonomous vehicles and robotics that haven't been priced in. Jensen Huang holds roughly 3% of the company and has real skin in the game. On the bear side, the valuation is elevated. A price to earnings ratio above 35 implies the market expects continued hypergrowth. If revenue growth decelerates even to 20 or 30% annual growth, the stock would likely be punished significantly. Customer concentration is a risk. Microsoft, Google, and Meta together represent roughly 40% of revenue. Geopolitical risk is real. US export controls on advanced chips have cut off China as a market, and AMD and custom chips are improving every year. My personal opinion is that NVIDIA is a buy for long-term investors who believe in AI infrastructure and spending will sustain for 5 or more years. Position size should reflect the elevated evaluation risk. This is this is just my personal opinion. Module 5, Company Analysis Failure Case. I chose Enron, and I want to start by telling you something that should disturb you. Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company 6 consecutive years in a row, the year before it collapsed. Enron Corporation was formed in 1985 through a merger of Houston Natural Gas and Internorth. It started as a natural gas pipeline company, a utilities business, boring by design, but under the leadership of Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay, transformed itself into one of the most aggressive energy trading companies in the world. At its peak, Enron generated over $111 billion in annual revenue and employed more than 20,000 people. It was the seventh largest company in the United States. Its stock price went from roughly $10 in the early 90s to over $90 in its peak in 2000. Then it collapsed. In December 2001, Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At the time, the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history within weeks. That the story that emerged was one of systematic, deliberate fraud at every level of the organization. The key figures you need to know: CEO Jeffrey Skilling, Chairman and the former CEO Kenneth Lay, CFO Andrew Fastow, and the architect of the fraud, and Arthur Anderson, and their auditing firm, which was later convicted of obstruction of justice for shredding their documents. To understand Enron's fall, you have to understand its rise, because the confidence that enabled the fraud was built on real early success. In 1989, Enron became one of the first companies to trade natural gas as a financial commodity. This was genuinely innovative. It created a market where none had already existed. In 1994, following electricity deregulation, they expanded into electricity trading with similar success. By 1999, they launched Enron Online, one of the first major e-commerce platforms in the world, processing over $335 billion in transactions. And for 6 straight years, Fortune magazine named them America's most innovative company. Here's a problem with being called the smartest people in the room over and over again. You start to believe it. You start to think that the rules don't apply to you. You start to believe in your own mythology. Enron's culture became so saturated with arrogance that anyone who raised doubts was dismissed, marginalized, or pushed out. That is the environment in which fraud becomes possible. Let me walk you through exactly how the fraud works. There were four primary mechanisms. First, special purpose entities or SPEs. CFO Andrew Fastow created hundreds of off-balance sheet shell companies, vehicles that were technically separate from Enron, but effectively controlled by Enron insiders. The purpose was simple. When Enron had bad investments or mounting debt, those losses were moved into these shell companies and hidden from the financial statements. What appeared on Enron's books was clean. What was actually happening was an accumulation of hidden liabilities that was eventually going to implode on itself. Second, mark-to-market accounting abuse. Mark-to-market, or MTM, is a legitimate accounting practice that allows for companies to record the estimated future value of a long-term contract as current revenue. Enron used this and systematically abused it. They booked the estimated future profits of deals on day one. Even when those deals were speculative, incomplete, and outright fictional, they were recognizing revenue that hadn't been earned or might never be earned. Third, energy market manipulation. Enron traders in California invented strategic with internal code names, Death Star, Fat Boy, Get Shorty, to create artificial electricity shortages in California to deliberately create artificial electricity shortages in California, deregulated the energy market, rolling blackouts, price spikes. Then they sold power back at inflated rates. This was not a side activity. It was a systematic profit strategy that caused real harm to California consumers and businesses. Fourth, Arthur Anderson's complicity. Enron's auditor was one of the five largest accounting firms in the world. They signed off on Enron's fraudulent financial statements. They also collected large consulting fees from Enron, a conflict of interest so glaring that it should have disqualified them. When the SEC began investigating Sh Anderson's employees shredded thousands of documents. Anderson was convicted of obstruction of justice in 2002, and the firm ceased to exist. The entire concept of auditor independence was permanently changed as a result. The collapse was swift and total. Look at the chart. Enron's stock price in January 2001 was $82 per share. By December 2nd, 2001, 11 months later, it was 26 cents. In August of 2001, CEO Jeff Skilling resigned, citing personal reasons. After just 6 months in the role, the market barely noticed at first, but insiders were already selling. In October, the SEC launched a formal investigation. Enron announced a $618 million quarterly loss. In November, they restated earnings going back to 1997, revealing that $600 million in profit had been fabricated. Their credit rating was cut to junk. On December 2nd, they filed for bankruptcy. 20,000 employees lost their jobs. Most of them also lost their retirement savings because they had been encouraged to hold their 401k plans heavily in Enron stock, which is now worthless. In 2006, Skilling was convicted and sentenced to 24 years in prison. Kenneth Lay was convicted as well, but he died before sentencing. Andrew Fastow received 6 years in exchange for cooperating with prosecutors. Enron is not just a story about fraud. It is a masterclass in how institutions fail and what to look for before they do. Lesson one, a culture of arrogance is fatal. When leaders believe they are unable to be wrong, dissent disappears. Dissent is a company's immune system. Enron's rank and yank performance culture, where the bottom 15% of employees were filed annually, eliminated anyone brave enough to raise their hand and say something was wrong. Lesson two, complexity can hide crime. SPEs and MTM accounting were legitimate tools. They had become weapons of deception in Enron's hands. This is something investors need to remember. When a company's financial statements are extremely complex and difficult to understand, that is not a sign of sophistication, and it can be a real red flag. Simplicity and transparency are virtues. Lesson three, audit independence is non-negotiable. Arthur Andersen's dual role as auditor and consultant corrupted their objectivity. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act, passed in 2002, directly in response to Enron, created strict rules around auditor independence that still govern public companies today. Lesson four, incentives drive behavior. Every Enron executive was compensated primarily in stock options that vested based on the stock price. That created a direct financial incentive to do whatever it took, legal or not, to keep the stock price rising. If you want to understand why people make bad choices in organizations, follow the compensation structure. In lesson five, whistleblowers matter. Sharon Watkins, an Enron's vice president, wrote an internal memo to Ken Lay in August 2001, warning that the accounting was problematic. She was ignored. Every organization needs to protect and reward people who speak up. And if you're ever truly in a position where someone comes to you with concerns, take it seriously. Module 6, Personal Finance Guidelines. This one I will be giving advice that can apply to anybody who is young and starting to kind of make their own money and starting to need to understand personal finance for the first time in their lives. The kind of advice that many adults wish that they got to receive earlier. The very first principle of financial intelligence is extremely simple. You cannot improve what you do not measure. And most people have absolutely no idea where the money actually goes. They have a very vague sense, rent, food, going out, but they've never actually tracked it with any precision. The framework on the left is called the 50-30-20 rule. It's a starting point and not a hard rule. 50% of your after-tax income goes to needs, rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, and things you genuinely can't cut. 30% goes to wants, entertainment, subscriptions, eating at restaurants, clothing, entertainment, stuff like that. And 20% goes to savings and investing. If you can't hit 20% yet, start with 5, then 10. The percentage matters less than the habit. The habit of paying yourself first, before lifestyle, before entertainment, is the foundation of everything else. The most important thing you can do this week is track every dollar you spend for the next 7 days, not to judge yourself, not to punish yourself, just to get data, because once you see the numbers, you're making financial decisions based on a feeling rather than reality. Use a free app or Excel or anything, or even AI or ChatGPT or something. Put in everything that you are using, that you're spending, that you're taking in, just so you can see all your finances, so you can get an actual visual representation of where everything is going. This is the most important slide in the entire module. I want you to really look at this chart. The green line represents someone who starts investing $200 a month at the age 18 at an average annual return of 8%, which is below the S&P 500's historical average. That person has over $1.2 million by age 65. The red line is someone who waits till age 30 to start the exact same time, $200 a month, same amount, same return, same discipline, but they start 12 years later. By age 65, they have $465,000. The difference is 725. The difference is $775,000. Not because one person saved more money, not because one person was smarter or worked harder, simply because one person started earlier. This is the compounding effect. Albert Einstein, or at least an internet version of him, called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. The people who understand it earn it. The people who don't pay it. The practical action here is straightforward. Open a Roth IRA. As soon as you have any earned income, a Roth IRA is the best possible investment account that a young person can have. You contribute after-tax dollars, then everything grows inside that account. Every dollar of interest and appreciation is completely tax-free when you withdraw it in retirement. The IRS contribution limit is $7,000 per year as of 2024. You don't need $7,000. Start with $25 a month. Start with 50 once you build a little bit more income. Start with whatever you have, really. The most important thing is to start right now. Now it's time to talk about the spending side because budgeting is not about saving more, it's about spending smarter. Principle one, avoid lifestyle inflation. Every time your income goes up, a raise, a bonus, a new job, a better salary, you'll feel the pull to upgrade your lifestyle immediately. Fight that instinct. Every raise is a savings opportunity, not a spending budget increase. Principle two, the 24-hour rule. Before any non-essential purchase over $50, wait 24 hours. Sleep on it. Most impulse purchases evaporate when you give yourself that pause. Principle three, audit your subscriptions. Most people are carrying 8 to 12 subscriptions they barely use. $12 a month on a forgotten subscription is 240 bucks a year, $2,400 over 10 years. That's money that you can be compounding and dollar cost averaging. Principle four, buy used when it's possible. A 2-year-old iPhone at 40% off is functionally identical to the new model. A used car that's 2 years old has already absorbed the worst depreciation. Quality used beats cheap new every time. And principle five, the one I want to leave you with on spending, debt is a multiplier in reverse. Credit card debt at 20 to 29% interest is a wealth destroying machine. Pay your balance in full every single month. If you can't afford to pay it in full, you can't afford to buy it, even if it's on credit. This is a rule you must strictly follow. Here are the first 5 concrete steps into investing in order. Step one, before you do any of the other steps, you have to build an emergency fund. And before you invest anything, 3 to 6 months of living expenses sitting in a high yield savings account. This is not investing, this is insurance. Without it, the first car repair or medical bill forces you to sell your investments at the worst possible time. Step two, open a Roth IRA. I just talked about this. Do it as soon as you have earned income. Your banks can help you set one up in 20 minutes. Step three, buy low cost index funds, preferably an S&P 500 index fund, such as VOO from Vanguard, FXAIX from Fidelity, SPY are all great. They give you exposure to 500 of the largest US companies in a single investment. These expense ratios are below 0.05%, meaning for every $1,000 you invest, you pay 50 cents per year in fees. Step four, automate as much as you can. Set up automatic transfers from your paycheck or bank account to your investment account on the same day every month. Automation removes willpower from the equation. And step five, the most counterintuitive one, do not try to beat the market. Over 90% of professional fund managers underperform the S&P 500 over 15-year periods. These are people with Bloomberg terminals and teams of analysts. You checking your phone and reading Reddit are not going to outperform them. Own the market. Do not try and outsmart it. I want to close this module with something concrete, a tiered action plan that you can actually use. This week, track every single dollar you spend just this week. This month, build a 50, 30, 20 budget. Identify 1 or 2 subscriptions you want to cancel. You'll find money you didn't even know you were wasting. This year, open a Roth IRA. If you have any earned income, automate $25 to $50 a month into an S&P 500 index fund. The amount is less important than starting. Always read one personal finance book a year. The one I recommend the most is The Psychology of Money by Morgan House. It's not about tactics, it's about behavior. Because personal finance is mostly a psychology problem, not a math problem. And avoid forever payday loans. Buy now, pay later schemes for non-essentials and any investment promising returns above 15% annually with no risk. There is no such thing. If someone is promising you guaranteed extraordinary returns, they're probably lying to you. Module 7, Legacy Message. This is part of the presentation where I want to stop being analytical and start being more honest and straightforward. I want to talk about why this program mattered to me, how it benefited to me, and what I would say to the students who are about to go through it. The question this program asks us to answer is why study business and finance? Now, here's my answer. First, money is a tool. We live in a culture where talking about money feels inappropriate, where asking about salary is uncomfortable, and discussing investing is for other people. The discomfort is expensive. The person who understands how compound interest works, how to use Roth IRA, how to read a balance sheet, that person will accumulate more wealth in their lifetime than someone with twice the income who never learned these things. Financial literacy is not greed, it is freedom. Second, you will always work for or with a business. It doesn't matter whether you become a doctor, engineer, or an artist or an athlete. You will sign contracts, you will negotiate salaries, you will manage budgets, you will interact with business structures every single day of your professional life. Understanding how they work is not optional, it's a baseline. Third, leadership begins now. You don't even need a title to lead. Every group project, every team, every family situation involves leadership decisions. The frameworks we learned in this program, Cotter's change model, the idea of servant leadership, the concept of distributed authority, these are applicable today, not in 10 years when you're a manager, today. And fourth, the world is more competitive than it's ever been. Artificial intelligence is transforming every industry at a pace no generation before ours has had to navigate. The students who enter that world with proper business literacy, financial intelligence, and entrepreneurial instincts will have a structural advantage. This program is part of building that advantage. When I look back on this year, here's what I've actually learned. Not what I was supposed to learn, but what I actually changed in the way I think about business and finance. First, leadership is a practice, not a personality. I used to think that leaders were born, that something people had to be born with, something that people had to just have. Connor dismantled that idea for me. Leadership is a set of behaviors that anyone can develop deliberately. And that was second, business is human. Every case we studied, Enron, Adani, Omar Solomon's hauling junk business came down to human choices, human values, and human failures. Numbers tell you what happened. The humans tell you why. Third, start before you're ready. Omar Solomon didn't wait until he had millions of dollars in funding to start his business. He used his mom van, he put up flyers, and he learned things the hard way. That's the best way to learn. Fourth, finance is not optional. I used to think that investing was something I'd worry about when I was an adult. I now understand that every month I delay is real money left on the table because compound interest doesn't wait for you to feel ready. And fifth, think long term. Every module in this program pushed me to think past the immediate, to consider now consider every second and third order consequences, to ask not what just happens now, but what happens in 5 years, and 10 years, and 20 years, and 50 years. The mental habit is the most valuable thing I'm taking out of here. To the next Lasher Business Institute. You're about to spend a year developing skills and frameworks that most of your peers won't encounter until they're halfway through college. If ever, do not take that lightly. This content will challenge you. The speakers will inspire you. The case studies will disturb you. That's the point. Business is not clean or simple. It's messy, dirty, political, and deeply connected to everything that matters in society. You will study companies that did extraordinary things and companies that caused extraordinary harm. You'll meet entrepreneurs who built something from nothing and executives who destroyed everything. Pay attention to both. The failures teach you more than success if you're willing to look honestly. My advice, genuinely be curious. Not just curious like you are in school to study for a test. There's a difference between learning to pass a test and learning to think differently. This program gives you the second thing, but only if you bring real attention to it. Learn to ask better questions. Learn to listen to people who disagree with you. Learn to be wrong quickly and right eventually. Those three habits will serve you in every context you ever operate in. The compound interest principle applies to knowledge just as much as to money. Every book you read, every concept you master, every conversation you take seriously is interest that will compound for the rest of your life. Study hard, think big, build something, leave it better than you found it. That concludes my Lasher Business Institute capstone presentation. 7 modules, leadership from Cotter, entrepreneurship from Omar Solomon, business power from Gautam Adani, an investment case for NVIDIA, a cautionary tale from Enron, and a practical personal finance framework and a message to whoever comes next. I want to personally thank Mr. Denoda and the Lasher Business Institute for building a program that actually challenged us to think, not just about business, but about the kind of people we want to be when we're running things. I'm ha